Welcome to Sewveryeasy. My name is Laura and I'm ready to sew the binding on my quilt. In a previous episode I did make the binding and I'll put a link in the description for you if you'd like to follow along with that. But in the meanwhile, the binding has been made and it's ready to go on to the quilt. There are a lot of ways to stop and start your binding when you put it on your quilt. Today I'm going to show you a method where your beginning and your ending overlap and fit inside of one another. And it is a very easy way. You do not have to pre-measure, and you're able to, when you come to the end, you're just able to stop. So let me show you a close-up of the way you need to press the beginning corner. And that's the key to this entire project. So here's the close-up of how you're going to do your starting corner. Open up your fabric all the way. Take this and fold it on a 45-degree angle. And give it a bit of a press. Next, fold this again back on its original fold line and press it again. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to trim along that 45-degree angle. And just with a pair of scissors, it's fine. And if you flip it over, you're going to be able to trim off that tail. So when it folds onto itself, you have that nice corner. So my edge is all trimmed and ready to go, and this is the starting edge, and I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance or thereabouts so that I have a nice folded edge on here, and this is the corner I'm going to start with. Now when you're going to start, it's really best to start at the bottom half on the side of the quilt, because for some reason the eye just doesn't notice it as much as it would notice it on the top or the bottom. And do not start with the corner, because, well, that will just make your life difficult. So now I have all of this binding, and there are many different ways of storing it before it gets through to the machine, but I find the easiest way is just take your end that you're going to finish with, and I just roll it in a bowl or some kind of container, and this is going to go on the floor beside my machine, and it'll just pull through ever so nicely, and it's no tangling, and it's going to be nice and clean. So I've started at the bottom half of the quilt edge, and I've lined up all of the raw edges along here. And so I'm going to be able to sew a 1/4 inch all the way. And I like to start just a little bit past this point. And you're going to go right over this. And just be careful that you're not going to stitch that to flip over. And you're just going to continue to sew a 1/4 inch all the way until you get to the corner. And when you reach the corner, you are going to stop at a 1/4 inch from this corner up. So you want that needle to stop a 1/4 inch in there. Now how are you going to know where your 1/4 inch is? Oh, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can put a pin here right at the edge of the fabric, and you can measure up the 1/4 inch, or you can use your foot. On the foot there are little markings. So by placing this foot on a ruler with a 1/4 inch mark, I can see that line right there is a 1/4 inch marking line. So I'm able to stop at that line, and I know my needle will be at a 1/4 inch mark. Getting to know your foot is a great thing. A lot of feet have marks on them, so just take a moment and get to know your feet, and those marks on your feet will save you a lot of time. So I've marked the edge here of my fabric, and I'm just going to sew within a 1/4 inch of that mark. I know the mark on my foot is at 1/4 inch, so I'm fine. Now if you have a machine that knots itself, you can let it knot itself at that point. And now I can remove that pin. Okay, so we've stopped the 1/4 inch in. Now, if you just take this edge of the fabric here and pinch it and pull it up to the top. So that edge is going to go up to that edge. Just pinch it and bring it up and straighten it. So that is how it's going to look here, and that's how it's going to look here. So you see the 45 in here. So this was the edge. Okay, now we're ready to sew down this edge. You need to start within the 1/4 inch of your seam allowance up at the top here. So you will put your needle down, and then you are going to put your foot down, and you're just going to start sewing. Now if your machine gives you a little hard time here, it's because it's trying to sew over this hump. There's a very easy way to solve that and help your machine along, and it is with a padded nail file. So you're going to put your needle in the fabric, lift up your foot, take this padded nail file, or you can use anything really that's just going to raise a little bit. And you're going to put that nail file right up against your fabric. Lower your foot, and now what has happened, it has kept the foot at a straight angle, not at a 45-degree angle, so it's not trying to fight going over this little hump. And you just start sewing. And you'll see the nail file just will come off. And there was no chance of you sewing over the nail file because the needle was already in the fabric. So let's get to the next corner. So I've come to the edge. I've used the marking on my foot to stop at the 1/4 inch. Lock it. Make your mark at that edge. Take that edge, pull it up to the top, turn your fabric, put the foot down, get your trusty old nail file, foot down, and we're off to the next corner. So I've worked all the way around with the binding, 4 corners are done, and I've come to the beginning, so now I need to end this. Right here where this little point begins, lay your border over and just cut it at a 45-degree angle. Just the top binding, not the bottom one. And this is what it looks like. You see you have a little bit of space in here, but you've not cut way into here. You want to be able to cut into this opening. Anywhere within the center is good. And then you're going to take that point and you are just going to tuck it up inside those layers. Just like that. And then you're going to continue to sew. Now if this little point comes out, it's really not a problem. You're just able to tuck it right back in. So with this point inside those 2 layers, I like to put a pin in here. The reason is so that it keeps that little point inside. I use a pin instead of a straight pin, just so that I don't stab myself in the meanwhile. And I've just done the binding, not the back layer. And that's just to prevent that tail from coming back out. So when you go to sew this and it turns around, you will have a nice clean edge along there. Now the binding is all sewn on. Like I said, the pin there is just to hold that little point in there. And when I start sewing, I will sew that edge down first. To secure it, take the pin out and then hand stitch all the way around. The key to this and doing the corners is marking that with just a little pinch of your fingers so you know what edge goes up. And if your machine gives you a hard time, you need to get something to get over that hump. Other than that, it really is simple. Give it a try. I'm so glad you could join me today, and as always, feel free to subscribe and come back soon and let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.